Well, let me say what a delight it is to be here, especially after spending 3 hours and 20 insufferable minutes on the stage at CNN the other night. I'm going to get more time in my opening statement than I got in 3 hours and 20 minutes. I honestly started at one point to go over to tell Dana Bash, Hugh Hewitt, hey guys, let's go out and get a sandwich. I'll leave them my cell number. They can text me if they need me anytime. I'm convinced that one of the reasons that I was sort of marginalized was because when I was asked would I like to engage in a food fight with one of the fellow Republicans on the stage, I declined because I didn't go there to fight Republicans. I went to that stage and I'm running for president to fight for America to get back on its feet again and be a country that our grandkids can love again. I said an opening statement there. The fact is, we've got a good, competent, capable group of people running for president. I'd like to convince you that all the people that are running for president on the Republican side, all 327 of us, that I would be the best one to quarterback the team to the Super Bowl and win because of a host of reasons, not the least of which is I've actually run against the Clinton political machine repeatedly. I beat it, and I live to tell about it. And I do think that matters a little bit, folks. But I do not want to become the quarterback for any reason other than I played a better game and won your confidence. I do not want to get the job because I broke the legs of all the other Republicans who were running for the office of the quarterback of the team. These are desperate times. We cannot afford to beat each other up because for 7.5 years we have been beaten up by an administration that has declared virtually all-out war on many of the values we hold dear. I want to remind you that a president matters. Not just in his executive skills and not just in his ability to get things done and to communicate and articulate the message to the American people. The president's character and our president's agenda matter. 7 years ago, we did not think that the qualification for the Secretary of Army was his sexual orientation. We thought it was how effective a military leader he would be. We now have people being selected for positions in the military based on homosexuality, not based on military readiness and capability. Something is wrong when that's the criteria. Years ago, I don't think most of us believed that we would be seeing the criminalization of Christianity as we are. I don't think it would ever have occurred to us that an elected Democrat county clerk in Kentucky would be ordered to jail because she followed the law of her state as it was clearly spelled out under her Constitution. And that a judge, unelected, would be so brutish as to put her in jail without bail because she would not bend her knee to the bail of a government that has run amok against the values of nature and nature's God. Something is incredibly wrong when that happens. I don't think 7 years ago we ever would have imagined when the Pope would come to America, that the White House would make sure that the audience he meets would be people who are there primarily to be a disruptive presence in his space because they have very different views than the church holds. Folks, I'm not even a Catholic, but I've got enough respect for the Pope and for the Catholic Church that I would like to believe that I would not try to make an in-your-face statement when you have the opportunity to welcome the head of the Catholic Church to the White House. And I'm just don't imagine that we would see a snack food company, a major corporation in this nation, market a special package of Doritos specifically for the gay community in order to give profits to one of the most vile, vicious, violent, and vulgar individuals in an organization I've ever met, who has suggested that people like Rick Santorum, Ben Carson, and me should all have violent things done to us, and I cannot speak to them in this lovely room, and that somehow that would be okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our nation's values, your values, are under assault. And I ask you this, who's next? Your pastor? The administrator of your Christian school? The president of the university that you went to for college? Who's next? This election matters, and it matters most in Iowa because you help determine who that next president will be. And I hope it will be me because of you. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
Regarding health care, as we continue to see more and more discussion on the federal and state levels on the current state of our health care system, what do you believe is the most achievable conservative plan to reform health care going forward?
The best way we need to address health care is to realize, first of all, that we've never addressed health care. What we've addressed is health insurance. And the idea of Obamacare has nothing to do with health or health care. If we're really serious about health care, we need to address the reason we have a crisis, and it isn't health care, it's health. 85% of all the dollars that we spend on health care in America are spent on chronic disease. Yet we don't really address that. What I suggest is that we focus on cures and prevention rather than simply spending enormous amounts of dollars once illnesses are at a catastrophic level. As president, I would launch an initiative to find cures for the 4 greatest cost drivers in healthcare today: cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's. The reason being, the diseases total up to trillions of dollars over the next several years, and we'll never be able to keep up with the cost of it. Everybody in this room, every single one of us, I would venture to say, has had a personal first-hand encounter with one or more of those 4 diseases, either with a mother, father, husband or wife, son or daughter, brother or sister, and in some cases with all 4 of those diseases. I don't have to tell you that it's costly, but the costs are staggering to us. Over $100 billion a year in cancer treatment, $300+ billion a year in heart disease, $500 billion a year in diabetes. Alzheimer's is going to be a $2 trillion disease by the year 2050. What we did for polio back in the 1950s not only saved billions and billions of dollars, but saved lives and saved the heartache of a lot of families. And our approach should be to cure things rather than simply treat them after they're out of control. Because with that, we not only change the healthcare system, but more importantly, we change the very economy of this country, which can never keep up with the kind of costs that we are seeing escalate just to treat out-of-control diseases.
Tens of thousands of Iraqi and Syrian Christians are being forced out of their traditional homelands by jihadist groups such as ISIS. As president, would you be willing to use your executive authority to expedite entry into the United States for those persecuted Christians who want to come here? And if not, why not?
The horrors that have been inflicted upon Christians around this world, people being beheaded because of their Christian faith, is truly a crisis. I realize the President wants us to take tens of thousands of Muslims, but I believe our first responsibility is to protect those who have no other place to go, because no Muslim nation will ever take those Christians. And we need to make it our priority to bring assistance, both humanitarian and even relocation, to those who are literally under the threat of a sword over their necks. We cannot, however, take anyone and everyone. We have to vet them. We have to know who they are. And we have to know that if they come to this country, they want to assimilate into America. I'm afraid that there's been a push to try to just have an open border with people migrating from the Middle East. And early indications are that at least 25% claiming to be refugees among the escapees from Syria, particularly the Muslims, are not, in fact, refugees at all. There is a big difference between bringing people to this country who are the Christians under threat and bringing people to this country who may not be refugees at all. And that is our primary duty, to make sure that whatever assistance we offer is done, but with the safety of Americans in mind and never being disregarded. There are Arab countries throughout the Middle East, and it is time that they take many of the Arab and Muslim refugees who are fleeing Syria. So far, the Saudis have taken not one. All they've done is offer to build some mosques. Well, we need to tell them we appreciate that, but instead of building mosques, they can build some homes, because we're going to be dropping off several thousand people at their door, and we're not going to take all of the people of the world if they're not going to take at least some. It is an absurdity that America has been played as chumps sometimes, and there comes a point at which we have to say, America has always done not only its part, but many, many times over. But it will not become the repository for every person who comes here, many of whom without the best intentions, to love this country, to live in this country, to assimilate in this country, and to accept the kind of life and freedom that we hold dear.
In light of the recent highly publicized videos detailing Planned Parenthood's pro-abortion practices and culture, do you support ending taxpayer dollars going to Planned Parenthood? And could you explain how your presidential administration, Department of Health and Human Services, would go about addressing funding for Planned Parenthood?
I don't know that there's a single Republican candidate for president who doesn't strongly support the notion of defunding Planned Parenthood. But I really want to make it very clear that simply defunding one of the many organizations in this country that carry out abortions and seeing that they don't get federal dollars is really not a very ambitious target. Not when 1.5 million babies a year are snuffed out in their mother's wombs, and since we have seen legalized abortion in 1973 with Roe v. Wade, because we surrendered to an out-of-control court, we've seen 16 million unborn children killed in this country. So I've got a better idea than simply defunding Planned Parenthood, which I absolutely support, as does every other presidential candidate on the Republican side. I ask every other presidential candidate to join me in this vow. Because if I'm elected president, I will invoke the 5th and the 14th Amendment to do more than defund Planned Parenthood, but to believe that the Constitution guarantees the protection of every person through due process from being deprived of life and liberty, and that they would also be subjected to equal treatment under the constitutional guarantees. There's really only one question left. Is the person inside that mother's womb a human being, or is it just a blob of tissue? There is no constitutional right for a blob of tissue. But my friend, there is a constitutional right for a person to be protected under the law, and I will protect every person under the law, and that means we will do more than defund Planned Parenthood. We will end the scourge of abortion in this country. Clear. Here's how that changes everything. Instead of those of us who believe in life being put on the defensive, as we have for the past 42 years, and having to try to prove that we should save a life, let us live under the Constitution that a president should honor with his oath, and make the other side prove that they should be given the right to take the life of the child. Let us go to court over whether or not the unborn child is in fact a human being, because I've never heard a person who became pregnant, whether it was my daughter or my daughter-in-law, and you haven't either, who went to the doctor and came and said, "I'm so excited, I'm going to have a clump of tissue." They said, "I'm going to have a baby." And everyone in our culture recognizes that we're talking about human life. And if it's human life, it's a person. And if it's a person, it should be guaranteed protection under the 5th and 14th Amendment. I pledge to you as President, we will make a very different direction. We will no longer simply acquiesce to a court that reached out into thin air and gave people the right to kill. We will reach into the Constitution itself and demand that we keep the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the Constitution.
Why do you believe the founders produced the Second Amendment?
The Second Amendment is not about hunting. I like to hunt. I deer hunt, turkey hunt, duck hunt. I pheasant hunted. Plan to do it in Iowa this year. Hopefully opening day. Do not get in my way. But when I hear people say, "Oh, I'm for the Second Amendment, I believe in hunting," I know they don't have a clue what the Second Amendment is about. Because the Second Amendment is not about hunting. The Second Amendment is about preserving and protecting all the other freedoms that we enjoy in this country, because our founders had to win the freedom that they won at the end of a gun. I know that may sound a little startling to some people, but we did not win our liberty because some people sat down and said to the British, "Would you please, pretty please, just leave us alone and let us create a country?" They declared their independence and said, "We will fight you to the death, and we will pledge our lives and our sacred honor, and we will create a country in which we can worship as we wish, speak freely, assemble as we want. We will no longer be under the tyranny of the king." The Second Amendment is the last stand we have to protect us from tyranny. That's why we have it. It is an individual right, and we must preserve it. And I want to add this, that the Second Amendment gives me the right and you the right to protect our families and our homes. And I've often said, look, if some person tries to break into my home in the middle of the night, I will still call 911. But I'm not calling 911 because I'm going to be cowering in fear, hoping that the cops get there before the bad guys get me. I'll be calling 911 to tell the cops where to come pick up the carcass of the idiot who tried to break into my house at 2 o'clock in the morning and threaten my family. I think I am done, they tell me. Thank you very much. God bless you. Thanks for